So I'm briefly going to look at R. Kelly's placements just as a disclaimer. Everything I've looked at online, anything that I've seen, we do not have a birth time for him. So this is not his actual house placements, but we can still look at certain planets that we notice are squaring or trining, conjunct, whatever the case may be. Really, the point of this is to look at, are there any indications in his chart of being someone who is predatory or being someone who may have issues moving past their past. For all intents and purposes, one, this is not my monetized channel, so we're going to just say that he is, there are going to be some things that we have to talk about this and sometimes are not widely explained on other channels. It is what it is. And regardless of whether you grew up listening to R. Kelly or not, that is not the point. At the end of the day, it is about decades-long list of victims, underaged children, minors, some adults as well. When the allegations of the girls who were in the house that they couldn't leave and all of those different things. But we do know there are some children involved in this. So this is a very sensitive topic for those of us who care about children, of course. And again, with this channel, this is not my main channel. And also at the end of the day, it is what it is. I don't debate people about the facts, but this is about the astrology of it. So where would there be any, and I also want to just give this disclaimer. If you have similar placements as him or anyone else who's done anything that is, predatory or something that is criminal in nature or abusive, that does not mean that you are going to become that as well. We have to look at someone's living conditions. We have to look at what someone has access to. We have to look at someone's upbringing. We do know that he apparently was abused by his older sister growing up sexually. So we do have to look at it in that way as well. Okay, it's not just about, I have the same placement as him. Is this going to happen to me? That's not how astrology works. Like at the end of the day, regardless of your chart, you have a whole life that is different than someone else's. And there's all these other factors as well, because anything can express differently. The sun in Capricorn can express positively for him. For instance, we know that Capricorn or the cardinal sign do tend to experience some level of fame. I mean, not fame necessarily, but success. Cardinal signs are the initiator sign. So they're used to trying something. They're used to, I'm going to get this done. And so when you see Capricorn, this is why he's had this very long-standing career. Okay, that's kind of what's kept him standing, to be honest, probably, is the fact that Capricorn goes towards the goal. And we know when it comes to, until he got into these trials, I believe for the most part, he tended to have pretty good financial income throughout the decades. I believe, except for the trials that he, paying for lawyers and things of that nature, the Sun conjunct Mercury increased the chance of someone like him being known for their voice or being known for what they say. So this is what I'm talking about with astrology. It can look different ways. In some people, Sun conjunct Mercury, they're known for politics, especially if they have Capricorn there, or they're known for being someone who they give the directions or they give the orders or something of that nature. They're known for that. That's a part of their personality through the sun. But his Sun conjunct Mercury, 12th degree, you know how I get down with degrees. If you watched any of my videos or you've gotten a reading from me, the 12th house is a Piscean degree in the system that I use. And so that means that he is, that softens it. That's that poetic song type of energy, or it is knowing how to use lyrics that are going to guide people in. He also has Saturn in Pisces. The Saturn in Pisces person sometimes has a story of sadness. Also, look, his Saturn's at the 24th degree as well. That's a Piscean degree, 12 and 24. Again, I have a video on the astrologer's degree system that I use for anyone that's interested. But Saturn in Pisces, a lot of times people with this placement have experienced early loss or early trauma or early upsets in life that have made them sensitive to something. Now, I don't sympathize with predators, period. I don't care. Once you hit a certain point in your life, you have got to get help. If you have millions of dollars or whatever, you can pay for a live-in therapist, okay? And look, his Saturn is conjunct his Chiron, so we can feel bad for the child that was harmed when he was young, like him being a child who was abused, and I'm pretty sure his sibling was abused, and that's often how, unfortunately, that family trauma continues. But we cannot, as an adult, we cannot feel bad I can't. You can do what you want to do. The adult who decides to prey on children, who the adult who preys on young people who are impressionable, who do not know the same things that you know as an adult. And so anytime there's a huge age difference, and of course if someone's a minor, you definitely have the upper hand. Now I know there's other factors to this. Some people are like, well, the parents allowed it. They're wrong too. Like we have to stop saying because someone's parents said something was okay that makes it right. There's many parents in this world who are wrong, right? Or that's not okay. So his Saturn conjunct his Pisces, and his Saturn conjunct Chiron in Pisces, it exacerbates the point of sadness, exacerbates some type of hardship growing up, or something from the past that has allowed for him to somehow not heal. And this 22nd degree is associated with Capricorn energy. Capricorn can be a bit, let's think about it. Capricorn energy at its worst, it can be depraved. It can be demented. It can be lack of remorse. It can be, I'm trying to get power. And he already has his sun in Capricorn, 17th degree. That's 17. That's a Leo degree. Why is that important? Let's go into that. Why is the Leo energy in his chart important? Because Leo is associated with children. Now, he does have his own children. So Jupiter in Leo at the 0 degree, also, again, that's a very early degree, Jupiter. But sometimes we see a person with Jupiter and Leo, children are going to be a theme. Now, some people, it's their mentoring children, or they have their own, or whatever the case may be. So the point here is that not only that, his Jupiter is in retrograde. So anytime you have retrograde energy, it's already not direct in the first place, right? And then when we look here, his south node is in Scorpio. Power. This is what I'm saying. When we know someone has done something bad, we have to look at the negative of the chart in a way. Get what I'm saying? We have to say, wait a minute, this person's example of what can happen at its worst if someone has a particular, has particular placements. Now, the south node in Scorpio is not bad. There's nothing wrong with being a south node in Scorpio, or being a north node in Scorpio, or Scorpio period. However, we know that Scorpio is tied to taboo, what is not acceptable, under secrets, things that are underneath the surface, things that are not widely known or seen, right? And he does have Neptune in Scorpio as well, a kind of delusion, where even when we know with his marriage to Aaliyah, like, was she 15 at the time, and this kind of this idea that they were together and this was going to work, like that definitely can link to his south node past of getting power from some level of having even dominance over someone, right? We know that Scorpio does also rule the genitals, so having these placements here, it further makes it a theme in the chart of consumption of power. And when we sometimes have a concentration in any way, and again, the south node is important because that is your karmic past. Even though it's not a placement, it might not be a personality placement, it's not Mercury, it's not Venus, right? But this is important to note because when we have heavy Capricorn in the chart and we have Scorpio in the chart, that is where we can sometimes, for some people, get over consumed with power. If he felt his power was ever taken from him, he's got to now get it back. And he feels more comfortable having power. Even with his ex-wife, I believe there were allegations of abuse. I don't remember all that much, but I do remember, like, not abuse, but there were some things she said where she hinted to things. But over the years, she's kind of wavered, it seems. Like, she felt embarrassed at one point. She felt shamed. And then she said, well, that's my children's father. And I mean, that's got to be a difficult circumstance to be in. And I do know that she went, and again, these are the allegations. I don't know. I would have to look it up. But also, what was I going to say? She was on that reality show at one point. So that's also something to keep in mind. She was on that reality show where she talked about a lot of these different things. Yes, I just looked it up. She did allege that there was some abuse at Byron Kelly. So do you see what I'm saying? Like, a person who is not healed, who has a generational trauma background, a person who has been let down by the adults in his life and his family, whatever, and now you get fame. Well, what happens when you get fame? Jupiter in Leo is also showing that his talents really spread, to be honest, right? He wrote and produced for many different R&B acts, right? He was very influential in the R&B game, period. So we're not going to deny that. But at the end of the day, the more power you get, when you have unresolved issues and trauma and you want to and you just kind of think that you have the right to kind of take whatever you want from someone, or you're gonna see that that's a theme within this person. So you have the fame, you have the attention on you, but that's still not enough, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So another thing to keep in mind, he has his sun is square Mars, as we can see, directly 17th degree. Like, even if his birth time is different than this, which it most likely is, because this is just the standard thing, the standard time, if you don't know someone's birth time. Even if he wasn't, that sun does not change degrees pretty much during the day, change probably the next day. So that means that 17 at 17 is that's what it is. So that square can sometimes mean a person who gets in trouble for their actions. When you have the sun square Mars and you don't learn how to work through that, you think you can separate your actions from who you are, which is likely what he did. Right. You separate your action. You think you can get away with it, but for how long? And we also know that Mars is considered to be in fall in Libra. That means that these actions, he probably is someone that he was married, he did have a lot of partnerships and friendships, and Mars in Libra can sometimes be that person who appears at one point as someone who is just there to help someone or just there to be a support. But remember, Mars doesn't function too well in Libra. So over time, a lot of Mars and Libra people do have power issues because Mars is not supposed to be but you know what I mean. Mars does not function easily in the sign of Libra. It can be passive aggressive. It can sometimes not address its real issues sometimes. And when that's squaring his sun, it's even more of a tendency there, perhaps. Now that Mercury square his Mars, that also means what he says and what he does, it doesn't always match up, right? He might have a complete disconnect in not understanding, about having to be honest about what he does, or be honest about the implications of that, right? There's a lot of pride, especially when we look at the fact that, well, if you have a Capricorn's conjunct the Mercury, you're used to people listening to you. He's a Capricorn. Listen, he got away with it. That first, well, we don't know the first incident of all time, but the first incident that we knew of, and again, I was a kid at the time with the Aaliyah marriage, so I didn't really quite understand anything until way later, but he got away with that. Like, the industry, like, even the world, he got away with that, right? They had that annulment, and then he still made music, and he still, was considered to be really influential as an R&B artist and also producer and all these things. Like, he got away with the first one. And I don't want to say got away because, as we know, it was a victim on the end of that. But he still kept doing it. And what does that lead to? That is that South Node in Scorpio. I can't stop. It's a compulsion energy. Whereas his North Node was in Taurus. He was supposed to learn to be authentic in life. He was supposed to learn to value what he had in life. He was supposed to learn how to let go of this need for power. Now, could someone's trauma interact with that? For sure. His past, his childhood, being abused himself. Now, again, we can feel bad for the child that was harmed as a child, but once you become older, in my opinion, and many people believe this as well, like, when you become an adult and you're conscious and you're aware of what happened to you, you can't make more victims. It's just not fair for other people to have to now be victimized because you were. And I know that's a very difficult conversation for people, but I would also say, and again, I'm not doing this like I would do a reading for a client because I'm on a time limit. I don't want this to be long, and I haven't thoroughly analyzed this chart, but there are some things I noticed right away. His Neptune trining his Chiron, where is it at? Neptune trining Chiron means through music and through creativity is how he's tried to heal some of the things he's went through in life. So that's probably a coping mechanism. Venus in Aquarius, though, this could be a good placement for somebody who's unconventional in relationships and has a more free, liberal type of mindset in terms of not being very conservative. Venus in Aquarius at its worst can be strange, have strange attachments. Look here, his Venus is opposing his Jupiter. That opposition creates a weird understanding of partnership, a weird understanding of romance, a weird understanding of a connection. Jupiter represents children in a chart. So Jupiter in his chart, not your chart. We're not talking about your chart. So if you have similar placements, we would have to analyze your whole chart to see. But also him having, I think, with this concept of minors, Venus opposing Jupiter, not understanding boundaries. Right? It's notorious. Now, speaking of boundaries, we want to go to Pluto. When a person doesn't have really good boundaries, what is Pluto showing us about the person? Now, he has Pluto conjunct Uranus. Weird power dynamics. Abuse can be rampant sometimes when we see Pluto aspected negatively. And as we can see, Pluto is literally opposing Saturn in his chart. The inability to work through or understand his own past, having difficult experiences with also his understanding his emotions, right? And his sensitivities, and also Virgo, self-improvement, therapy. There's a reluctance there, most likely on his part, to get the help that was needed, because no, Virgo is a sign of help and service. But again, when we're looking at an individual's chart, we have to pull out everything we know and apply it to that person in particular. And so, though I'm not saying Pluto conjunct Uranus is a bad placement, when we know about R. Kelly, look at this, the 20th degree. That's a Scorpio degree. That's power. That's fixation. Virgo, the fixation, the compulsion. And also it's in retrograde. So when something's in retrograde, I have a video about retrograde. Doesn't mean it's bad. On my main channel, I have a video. It doesn't mean a retrograde is bad, but when we take the whole chart into consideration, what are we starting to notice here? We're starting to notice that this was one, even if he was not preying on children, there would still have been, and minors and adults and whatever, right? There still would be something about him that is compulsive, something about him that was that even the moon being in Sagittarius, you know, I'm a moon in Sag, so I'm not going to take offense for what I'm saying because I'm not R. Kelly, right? But moon in Sag can have impulse issues, right? Moon in Sag has to be careful that whatever it is that they're interested in is something that's purposeful and it aligns with their own morals, right? Him not having a strong hold on what he believed. Now, again, I bet you, since he's a moon in Sag, no, he would probably tell you he believes in religion. I bet you he does. Capricorn 1 is very traditional. So no matter, even when a Capricorn does something that we think is wrong, or Capricorn tends to have some type of traditional leanings and beliefs. I bet you he's probably got a Bible in prison. I bet you he would still tell you that he believes in a God. I bet you he still would have some type of religious thing. And I know that he's like written songs and things like, you know, and I'm pretty sure we could dig up some interviews where he talks about God or something like that. But the moon and Sag person, no, moon and Sag is not always religious, but growing up in the time that he did and knowing what the background of some of the things that he used to say, I do think that that moon and Sag person in him probably still thinks God is going to save him, or thinks like God has got my back or something like that. But again, that can be that very much that energy of having denial, not fully understanding or wanting to understand the ramifications of your actions. No, Capricorn does not take defeat well at all. Capricorn does not like to feel that they have been overpowered, or that they now have no more control. That's the thing. When Capricorn is not in a good position, in a good placement, when the person is not fully developed, when the person is not evolved, doesn't matter how old he is, yes. You know, he's up there in age now. It doesn't matter. If you've not fully evolved, if you've not fully grown up, you're not going to necessarily understand how to take defeat in a way where you can bounce back. And you can't really bounce back from certain things. That just, you know, that there are certain things that are not able to happen based on the reputation. Capricorn cares a lot about its reputation, but when you have ruined your reputation, now that is where this sense of hopelessness comes in from this type of individual. So I did want to share that. So that is it for this video. Again, I did not go through all of these other placements in the chart in particular because they were really not that important, but even like, you know, Juno being in retrograde, and, you know, that Ceres in retrograde. He has a lot of retrograde energy that could be impacted by the fact that his South Node in Scorpio ideally was not met. Like he came into this, now you could look at it two ways. Karmically, your South Node in Scorpio, you're supposed to release power. You're supposed to stop being so entrenched in power, or believing that someone owes you something, or believing that someone belongs to you, right? That inverse of Taurus, where Taurus understands possessions. You own excuse me. You own possessions, not people. Sometimes Scorpio energy at its extremes doesn't understand that. People are not possessions. But he clearly did not tap into his North Node in Taurus, right? Maybe in terms of being resourceful with money, but our North Node always has a spiritual component as well, even though it has a literal component, right? Okay, the North Node in Taurus, you're supposed to be resourceful. You're supposed to not overspend. You're supposed to learn the value of money. You're supposed to accept money for your services. You're supposed to learn how to gather your resources and always be willing to find avenues that allow for some level of steady growth, right? But maybe he did that financially, but he clearly did not do that spiritually, right? And so we're seeing someone who has one, yes, we can admit there's some childhood trauma there, right? And because of that, can we say that maybe that afflicted his south node, right? Astrologically is what I'm looking at. You came into this world, you were supposed to do this, but because of your family dynamics, you were exposed to some abuse yourself, and then you became an abuser. Who, again, that's your responsibility once you become of age, or when you are conscious and you are old enough to know what's happened to you. And again, I'm not going to speak for victims. I'm not going to say what you should have done or they should have done, but I'm simply talking to someone as an adult who had access to resources, access to help, access to therapy. As we could see, did not get it. Right. So this is what I wanted to share with. This is an example of someone whose chart was set up just in a way where, like, if trauma was not overcame, it definitely, we can see why this ended the way that it did in terms of him, having victims and also getting charged for his crimes. And so that's it. That's all I wanted to mention here for this chart. Again, there's probably other interpretations I can make. I just don't have time to do that. So please hit the like button, or feel free to comment if there's any other celebrities, famous people that you think I should do a chart reading on.